call the Linn-Mar regular meeting to order at 5 p.m. in the boardroom of the Learning Resource Center. Will you please determine a quorum?
Here. Eisenberg.
Here.
Lawson.
Here.
Maury.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Walt. And Weaver.
Here.
Quorum is present at 5 o'clock.
Okay. Before we do an agenda, when you give a motion, will you speak up? And all because the people who are taking minutes today are ways away from us, so it might be hard to hear otherwise. Okay, adopt agenda.
Make a motion to adopt the agenda with the amended personnel listing.
Second.
Sarah and Clark.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it passes. So will there be audience communications today? Are any of you speaking?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What'd you say?
It said, are any of you here to speak today? Okay. At this time, the board invites the public to speak on items related to the agenda or district. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The board provides this time so that patrons have an opportunity to address information that may be relevant to board discussion. The board will receive and acknowledge comments, but will not engage in dialogue with the speaker because of the set agenda for the meeting. Meeting agendas are posted on the Linn-Mar website no later than 24 hours preceding the meeting. When addressing the board, remarks should not contain names or other identifying information about students, teachers, administrators, or other personnel because of potential confidentiality nature of certain situations. In such cases, the speaker should contact the appropriate administrator with concern. The board appreciates the interest shown by patrons who are willing to speak to help us realize our mission for Linn-Mar. Students, inspire learning, unlock potential, and empower achievement. So, whoever would like to speak, you have 3 minutes. Please tell us who you are.
My name's Nicole.
Okay.
I wrote it all down. Okay. Dear Linn-Mar School Board, teachers, and parents, we are parents to 4 children and live in the Linn-Mar district. We chose this year to keep our children home because we were deeply concerned by all the fear being sold by your district just from a quick perusing of your social media account and the conversations I had with the front offices of our assigned schools. My fears turned out to be valid, as my nephews do attend the Linn-Mar schools. One of them will not step outside without a mask because he has an intense fear of anxiety that he will kill someone. Is that healthy? Is that okay to put that kind of fear on a child? Since when was it the children's jobs to keep the adults safe? He feels this way from the kind of conversations his teachers are having in our public schools, despite his parents reassuring he certainly is not going to kill anyone. The evidence is lacking at best in children passing this to adults, and many private schools have gone through an entire year, no mask, no fear from their teachers, and their numbers are the same, if not better, than Linn-Mar. While we have been given back our choice, a choice that never should have been lost, we are now hearing reports of teachers still trying to control and coerce their students, threatening them, separating them, and calling them selfish. These are not respectful adults, and this behavior should not be tolerated. In a culture where we are to teach consent and body autonomy, we are doing the exact opposite. Teachers who want to force their beliefs and the responsibility of their health onto others should be seen as no better than a child abuser using fear to control and manipulate young children. Enough is enough. End the fear discussion. Talk to your teachers about respecting all students in your district and allow every family to do what they believe is necessary for their own health.
Okay. Is there anyone else?
Yeah.
Can you state your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Kyle Hain. I assume everybody here is on the board. Is that correct? Okay. For those of you that I'm looking at right now, any one of you that condoned masking defenseless children, you are all tyrants. Any one of you. And I believe you're complicit in mass child abuse and fear-mongering amongst children. Laugh. I'm not. Your actions have proven you are not independent thinkers, but mindless lackeys. None of you led, you're incapable of it. And again, I'm speaking to the ones that condoned it. Those that did not, I appreciate you. I was just doing what I was told excuse. That didn't work for the criminals during the Nuremberg trials, and I hope to God it doesn't work for any of you either. Maybe you believed that abusing a child by forcing them to wear a mask and scaring them and driving fear into them, as some of the teachers are still doing today, was a reasonable act. For that, you should be stripped of all authority, because you're either a coward or a fool and you're not fit to lead. Tonight, I speak to every parent who's listening who didn't show up here, that I hope the next school board you do. I'm hoping that every independent thinker, anybody of any reason whatsoever, shows up, and I urge that all these sick people who condone this are completely removed from power forever over our children. And that's all.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
My name is Matt Rollinger. I have 2 children in the Linn-Mar School District. I don't have anything prepared, but I am echoing what Kyle and Nicole have said. Every person in this room that condoned what was done this year has failed. Every single one of you have failed our children, their children, your children. You have failed the parents of this district, the tax-paying customers of this school district. You are cowards. For an entire year, you would not let us come in here and look at you in the face and voice our opinion to what you have done. And what have you done? Let's look at what you have done. You have done absolutely nothing. You have hid behind unelected bureaucrats and their suggestions. That is what you have done. We elected you to make decisions on hard things when hard things come up, and you have not done it. We, me, my family, and a lot of other parents are not going to forget what you have done. My suggestion for you, if you condone what happened and are still condoning what is happening with teachers bullying students, 12, 13-year-old students, if you are condoning that, I suggest you resign your position immediately. Because we are coming for those positions. Because we are not going to take it anymore. If there's one thing that came from this year, it is that parents are now back involved and we are taking our school back. And we're not going to be talked down to like those 12 and 13-year-old students were. We're standing up. And I suggest you get on board or get out. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Okay, we will move on. Next is informational reports, discussions, presentations, teaching and learning update. Nathan Ware.
Okay. So yeah, thanks, board members. Appreciate having some time to share with you what got pushed back from last meeting. So we're going to talk professional development update. So in your packets, you should have what we handed out last week. And I just want to highlight a couple things that we're going to make sure that we share with all of our teachers before we leave. So I think this is a pretty big celebration for us because we want every staff member to have in their hands this plan before they leave for summer. So that way when we get back in the fall, we can hit the ground running with our professional learning plan. So I'm just going to walk through some of the highlights on this first page to just kind of synthesize everything that we've been doing. So, you know, we had our strategic plan that we kicked off really kind of before COVID hit, and then COVID took us sideways with some of that stuff. But we never went away from that student learning piece. So obviously we're still trying to keep that in the forefront. You'll see some priority areas there, and I'm not going to go through all those. You heard some of those from Christy last time and from our student assistance team and our counselors. So we're still going to have that. So you'll see the social emotional learning reflected in there. And actually what's nice about what Christy shared at the last meeting is that our teachers are really going to have some choice and flexibility with that. So we'll allow buildings to kind of choose their own path, and you have some of those programs listed in here that Christy talked about that we'll be doing with staff. The other things that'll be huge for us will just be our K through 2 literacy adoption. We're working with teachers this week to select new materials at K2. So I know Carla Reese, our elementary director of teaching and learning, has that scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. Looking at the data, the teacher and the parent feedback. We did 2 pilots of different vendors, one at Indian Creek and one at Lynn Grove, and so we're anxious to see what that'll be. So you can see that we've got a lot on our plates. And obviously the big issue is continuing this idea of, and I don't like to call it learning loss, but that's what everybody else calls it, but really accelerating our learning through this COVID time. So, I don't want us to think deficit-minded. I don't want us to think that our kids are behind or have missed anything. We've been doing a lot of good teaching through this shutdown, but we will need to hit the ground running in the fall. So if you look through the days, I just want to point out a few things. You can see where we get started with teachers back in August. Our staff, obviously from a professional learning situation, is really excited to have these days back because we lost a few of those, when the derecho hit this year. So we tried to start by balancing out what happens at the beginning of the year, and then we will be able to sprinkle back in our professional learning throughout the rest of the year. There's a couple things that you'll see on there. First, I want to point out on Thursday, August 19th, so if you flip a couple pages, we are going to partner with Solution Tree. So Solution Tree is is the premier provider of professional learning for schools and educators around the nation. And we really wanted to use this opportunity to re-energize our professional learning community. So if you remember several years ago, some of you may have been on the board then, when we invited the PLC, we had the PLC conference here, like on site, and we did all of that work. Our staff really embraces that, but what I saw through COVID is our teams that really operated as true PLCs really came out more successful than some of our teams that struggled with some of those PLC concepts. So that idea of what are we going to do for every kid, how are we going to know when they learned it, Solution Tree is going to help us with that. They are going to work with Jeff and the high school team on June 15th. They're going to work with the teaching and learning department on June 17th, and we're going to work with all principals on June 18th. So our goal with that is to really calibrate what we're doing as administrators, so that when we get teachers here in the fall, then on August 19th, we'll be crystal clear in our focus of what we're asking them to do. I anticipate those consultants, the one that will be here that day, will probably do an hour to an hour and a half at each level of, hey, here are some things as your teams are getting back into the swing of things and working together and face-to-face meetings and all of that, that they will focus on, and then teams can go and practice those research-based practices. We'll also have a follow-up then on Monday, January 24th, so January of next year. You can see the topics in there, and I'm not going to go through everything, but what we really tried to do is say, here's some of our main rocks that we're going to hit on those days as far as professional learning. It's not meant to be an all-day event. Some of them may be all day. Most of them are going to be half-day so that our buildings, and you've heard from our theme schools and all the other work that's going on that's specific to each individual building, they'll still have time to work with their teachers and staff. So after you get through the end of the year with that calendar, then you see the days that Christy had included in there, and those are, I think she shared this last time, but what we're sharing there is that for all of our mental health supports, we're really going to let our buildings and teachers, like I said, kind of choose their own path. So some people did these things this year. Some of this will be new to staff next year, and that way we can continue this 3-year learning journey that we've been on to support social-emotional learning. We have our high reliability schools. You've heard a lot from that from us. We still have some schools that are in the process of certifying level 1. We had several that got started with level 2. We have a virtual summit this year, which is kind of nice because we can't attend in person. They will allow us to record the sessions. We can use that for training, so we're going to be investing in that over the summer. And then we just hired our instructional coaches this week, so our instructional coach program, which supports the implementation of our professional learning, will continue next year with a couple new coaches. The other thing that you have in your packet was just a quick summer school update, so I wanted to bring some attention to that real quick. We are in the process of finalizing our FAST scores, so we should have that list done here this week of prioritized current kindergarten and first graders that we will target for summer school. We have one of our facilitators who is also an administrator going to be working with Carla to oversee that program. That will be, what did I put on there, Barry, 9 days? Yes. So we're going to do that in August, right before teachers get back. That's a look at our professional learning. Obviously, I could talk a lot about all the things we're doing in there, but I just wanted you to have a real general overview of what teachers are going to be getting here at the end of the year. I certainly want to echo my thanks and leadership for this school board, for everything that you've done this year to keep our kids and children safe and learning, and we look forward to taking that next step next year. So thank you. Questions? Do you have questions about professional development?
This is critical. This is important, I think, for development.
Yes, absolutely.
Because like you said, we've lost it this last year.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have traded the 9 days up front. I think that helped for where we were at with the storm. But yeah, we certainly missed it as we went through the year. So
I really don't think we could have functioned if we wouldn't have had that
No,
time at the
right.
beginning. I mean,
Had to do at the time.
it was so
It was.
much for everyone, and even
Yeah.
after that, you have to actually do it to really understand it, and it was so difficult for so many reasons. But
Yeah.
we all worked together. That was
Yep.
awesome. You guys did a great job. Any other questions? Any comments? Looks like we're good.
good.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Nathan. We appreciate it. All right, have to find where we're at here. Okay, next, policy committee. Maybe Shannon can give us an overview of all of that, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Yeah, to give a quick update. Really no major changes from this policy committee meeting we had this last round, just a few minor things. The first few all relate to technology and safety-related topics. Some suggestions from IASB, and then just some district preferences as well to make sure we are providing a safe environment for our students and staff technology-wise through our schools. Next couple of, I guess only one I think, was the definition of at-risk from a state level. I just wanted to clarify that term, how that's used, so one of our policies just need to add a little kind of a descriptor to that. A couple other ones we're just adjusting to match our new grade level configuration this year, kind of catching the policy up to where we're at. And then the last several changes really connect from just a name change for next year as we look at changing ECBP to junior kindergarten. Just a simple name change to help people understand what it is, try to be more clarity. The term early childhood blended program, or ECBP, always causes more confusion than help, it seems like, so just changing the name. The program itself is not changing at all, so just to match that policy. Otherwise, I think the only other one in there was maybe one as far as a financial adjustment as well to match our neighboring schools and current practices. So, any questions on those policies?
I don't have a question, but as I was reading through them, not necessarily in the policy, but I think it would be helpful, all the updates about how we're going to teach students about internet safety. That's a very broad term, and I could just see down the road parents wanting to know what that means. Like, what are we talking about when we talk about internet safety and online credit? Like, somewhere, not necessarily in the policy, but somewhere we should have that defined.
Yeah, I think it's more the curricular instructional side of it. Yep,
So.
that's a very good point.
We'll move on to facilities. There were 3 board members at that meeting, including myself, quite a few members of the community and staff, and it was a great way to get started on reviewing about our facilities. Clark, would you like to say anything?
I thought it went really well. There was, I thought there might be not enough community members, but when I started looking around, I think it was a good representation. I think the meeting went really well as far as setting up the priorities. I appreciate both members of OPN. I thought they did a really good job of their presentation, and expectations as to where we go from here and how they're going to set up their meetings. And I thought it went very well. I think there was a lot of contributions. I'm really excited and to see how everything panned out with everybody's suggestions. And I think that will give us a better pulse on what the community as well as administration and people that were there is going to give us. But I was very impressed on how well it went and how it ran, and hope the rest of the meetings go that well.
Rick, would you like to say anything?
I would agree with everything Clark said, and just add that the ending activity, they put up like the giant sticky notes and gave us all Post-its, and all the beginning of the meeting was overview, which was very good, and JT did a great job, as he always does, of explaining the finances, but as you all know, it was very quiet. So it was nice to see that as soon as we had our Post-its and as soon as we were told, put your suggestions under each topic or building or questions, whatever you have, those sheets were full of Post-its from everybody there. So I'm really excited to see what that looks like when they combine all the results and they give us kind of what everyone's thoughts were. I think but it was very engaging.
I thought it was very, the atmosphere was conducive for people having free time to talk and be able to walk around and share ideas and that. And we were not asleep during JT's presentation at all. It was very good, and everybody, I think you just need that to have a common ground, so that was awesome. Our next meeting is June 7th, so we'll see where we go from here, and it'll be exciting to find out. Anything else?
One thing I mentioned, just for other board members' context, when we talk about the posters that were up in the stickies, the posters were directly connected to what we talked about at our last board meeting as far as the high school footprint ideas, and then the other ideas that facility needs outside the high school footprint, so people could put up individual thoughts on each of those areas. So that's where the topics came from as far as our earlier conversations. But otherwise, I would agree with everybody as far as just the general vibe of the conversation, lots of great input from folks, and really just a really good starting point for us, I think, in this process.
Yeah, Shannon gave us a list of, I think, 12 or 13 things, and that was what the headline, were the topics that were on those pieces.
And then there was an other, so if anyone had anything they thought was important that we hadn't put on the list, there was an other sheet that they could add those in. So that was nice.
Which is great. Okay, we're going to move on to School Improvement Advisory Committee. Anyone like to speak to that?
I thought Rachel was giving a presentation on this.
Yes, not.
No, Nathan runs a nice meeting. Everything went quite well. The main things we talked about were online classes, and help me out with the other major piece you talked about.
Yeah, we just looked at our venture program. I know the board had some of that, but our community members and staff members didn't know as much about that. So
You had a few volunteers in that group that really want to step up and help next fall, so that's a good thing too. So.
All right, we'll move on to Finance Audit Committee. Tim, I think you had something.
Oh, no, I just got my stuff. I can go through it.
Oh, yeah, you ran out to get your notes.
Well,
So go for it.
I didn't look at the notes. But, no, it was a good discussion as always. One thing I think we touched on that caught my eye was the free and reduced lunch, the nutrition for for next year. So it's changing a little bit, but not bad, I think. It's still going to be all meals free. So that was the one thing.
That's because of the federal money?
Yep, federal money. Yep.
That's separate than the ESSER funds.
Okay, but it still is that?
Yeah, it's still federal money will be provided for the
Okay.
reimbursement for the meals, correct.
Bridget, is there anything you'd like to say?
I'll just talk about the insurance segment. We've been prepared all year that the premiums were probably going to go up, and that didn't happen. But the one thing I want to point out is we were able to maintain our crime cybersecurity insurance policy, which lots of districts, I guess, aren't able to do. And that was in part thanks a lot to Jerry and her team for getting that two-factor authentication on our system so that we could maintain that insurance policy. So I think that's important with all the
Good job.
technology we've used this year. So I just wanted to say great job, and I'm glad that that's in there,
Okay.
despite the increased premiums.
Would you like to say anything?
Yeah, just a couple items. You talked about the nutrition piece of it. Going into this next year, I think our high school situation will be kind of interesting because it's really hard for them to plan because we don't know how many kids will be eating and what's going on and what we're going to expect as a high school to how many kids can go off campus or can't. So that'll be part of the discussion. And probably the biggest thing for me that I kept looking at is the bond refinancing that we're going to be doing this summer. So I think that'll be huge for the district too, with interest rates where they're at. So
Save us some money. It's always good. All right, we'll go on. I had the Marion City Council, and pretty much the biggest discussion was about the idea of putting speed cameras at different places within Marion, and that's in discussion mode, I think is a good way to put it. So that's more to see in the future. Moving on to legislative updates.
I'll start off, and Tim and Britt, please add in wherever you see fit. I think the biggest news is the legislative session did end Wednesday night. It was several weeks after the anticipated ending. Just a lot to keep up with throughout the session. I think everybody would agree. I see they did adjourn, obviously now, but they did discuss having another legislative session in August, which would be very unusual. The primary purpose of that would be for some redistricting, but they did leave the door open to readdress other topics. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on as well. You're volunteering to serve as legislative liaisons, and maybe just getting a little bit broader responsibility. We'll see how that plays out. As I mentioned to you in the Friday memo, just a couple of real brief highlights of things that came out of there. Pearl did survive the Pearl levy, so that was great to see. We're one of the few schools in Iowa that has that to use funds towards our playgrounds and recreational areas as well, so we're glad to see that. Last minute, the Pledge of Allegiance administration was thrown back in after being in and out of bills throughout the session, but only for 1st through 12th graders, so we're awaiting some guidance from the Department of Ed on what that actually means for us, but that was added back. Charter schools were expanded, vouchers did not survive. Virtual snow days will not be an option for next school year, as it was this year. It was a one-time option. It will stay as a one-time option. The one-time supplemental funding to help offset COVID expenses did not happen like we were led to believe for a while was going to happen. That's kind of the main things, besides then the last-minute decision to make masks not an option for schools to require, which I'll talk more about in my update. So that's kind of the...
Have they defined the pledge at all? I mean, if you think about a high school, how many new classes, how many classes kids go through every day? They have to say the pledge every single time?
I think it's just daily administration.
Like maybe the first class or something like that. I was just wondering how they...
Yeah, we're still waiting for usually what happens now is after the legislative session ends, IASB and the Department of Education spend a lot of time to go through and really analyze the new laws and then give us the actual applications and interpretations. Sometimes that takes until midsummer to get that information. I anticipate that'll probably be the case this year as well, because there's a lot to unpack in this last session. So we'll await that guidance before we put anything in place for sure, but we know that will have to happen in some way, shape, or form. And then Britt gave a handout as well that she summarized a lot more detail and bigger picture than I did, and a few thoughts for the future too.
Yeah, you hit a lot of stuff that I didn't put on here though, so combined you'll get it all. So I did topics this time instead of specific bills since it's over. So you can kind of see basic on topics where things landed. I think I added under the charter schools that two have already identified themselves as going to apply, and there are several national ones that are now looking, so we can be aware of that. So I won't go into any more detail than Shannon did. I will say at the end, so there's new rules for public comments, House File 868, that you should all take a moment and read through just to have an understanding of what we might expect once that goes into effect. I think the governor hasn't signed it yet, so it's not in effect yet, but maybe. And then on the very end, the last couple of pages, I just listed all the bills that remain eligible for future consideration in the next session or August, if they go that direction. So they're dead for now, but not dead.
Britt, what was the one that you wanted us to, right there by your thing,
Page 3.
Okay,
Just read through it so you
Thank you.
know if the governor signs it, then that's something we'll need to understand and perhaps expect.
Because that affects the State Board of Education, right? Is that,
And school district
It's
procedures
school
as well.
district decisions too.
right?
And Bert brings up a good point that I did mention, is not all of these bills have been signed by the governor yet either, so we'll have to wait and see if that actually happens for
Yeah.
several of these.
I tried to put in here if it's passed and signed or passed and awaiting signature, so.
Appreciate that. It's a good thing. All right. Any questions? Okay, we'll go on to, next is cabinet update. Shannon?
Yeah, a couple things for you. First of all, the mask mandate that came out late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, really had us in a scramble mode Thursday to transition to sudden new rules. The timing announcement just made it difficult from a communication standpoint, not only to our staff, but the families, and to plan accordingly too. So really, we apologize to families for that confusion, and it led to a lot of questions from people that we were really trying to piece together as we tried to adapt to the new law. What we've really tried to do since then is to really clarify what the law means and really just emphasize respect for everybody, students, staff members, whether they choose to wear a mask, whether they choose not to. That is certainly their personal right to do that, and we really want to make sure to honor that. And that just was kind of a struggle. We had several students that have always worn a mask to school as kindergartners their entire life. As a student, that's always been the case. So there's just a lot of confusion of, should they wear a mask? Does their mom want them to? Just a lot of questions and things we had to straighten out and sort out. And I think we've done that now, so I feel like we're in a better spot there too. But that timing just made things very, very challenging, not just for us, but for every school in Iowa for the most part, I think. So two other just calendar items I want to touch base with for board members and community as well. I'm really excited. High school graduation will be back in a full commencement mode, which will be nice to have one graduation ceremony instead of 101 like we did last year. That was fun, but it'll be really fun, nice to get back to that large atmosphere for our students to really celebrate and recognize their unique year and a half that they've had as students as they finish things up too. So 1 o'clock at the Alliant Energy Powerhouse. Everybody can be there. Look forward to returning to our traditional format. And then the final item I had is just another calendar item, just to clarify, especially for board members, the Boulder Peak, Hazel Point open house and ribbon cutting events are Wednesday, June 2nd. From 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, they're both open at exactly the same time, so people can go to one, they can go to both, they can pick and choose. We are doing a ribbon cutting at each of them, and the ribbon cutting will not necessarily be your normal ribbon cutting. We're going to have it very quick, I would say, almost more of a photo op as much as anything. The rationale behind that was with open houses going on at both buildings and trying to get chamber and everybody moved from one spot to the other, to have a full ceremony recognition would be really tough to pull off and still coordinate for everybody, especially since we're doing a ribbon cutting at the end of the school year essentially instead of the beginning. Has a little bit different feel to it, but we thought we still wanted to have that moment as well. So the ribbon cuttings will be 5:30 at Boulder Peak and then 6 o'clock at Hazel Point. We're going to do both of those right in front of the school next to the door, so it won't be blocking people as they're coming in and out of the open house, but right kind of underneath the sign of each building. If it's raining, we'll go to Plan B, which we don't have yet, so I'll let you know when that comes as well. So, but we'll keep them very brief, do a very quick organizational photo opportunity, cut the ribbon, and then we'll move on to the next spot and do the same thing. So I know it seems kind of rushed, but I think we'll be okay time-wise to make that happen. So any questions for me on those events or items? All right, thanks.
All right. We'll move on to 501.
Move to accept the Blumen Woods roof improvement project as complete and to finalize final payment of $50,343.86 to DC Taylor Company.
Second. So that was Barry and seconded by Kara. Any questions, comments?
Just to clarify, this won't be the last work done for Bowman Woods on their roof. There was the metal roof that's still at Bowman Woods. There was hail damage done right before derecho, so that work won't be done this summer, but likely next summer. So we got ongoing roof projects for the next 2 or 3 years. So just wanted to make the board aware of that.
Thank you. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. On to 601.
Make a motion to approve 2.20% total package increase for the transportation staff for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
Okay, that was Clark and Britt for a second. Any questions, comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Student fee schedule.
Make a motion to approve the student fee schedule for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
Second. Clark.
Okay, so Britt and Clark. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. On to the first reading of policy recommendations.
Make a motion to approve the first reading of the policy recommendations as presented.
Second. Britt and Kara. Any questions? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries.
Make a motion to approve the overnight field trip request for 3 students involved in the district's HOSA Future Health Professionals Program to attend the required officer training in Ankeny on June 11th through the 12th.
Second.
Okay, so Kara's motion, and who was second? Clark. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, motion for the calendar.
I make a motion to update the 2020-2021 school calendar to reflect Friday, June 4th as the last day for students.
Okay, so Kara and seconded by Barry. Any discussion? Any comments?
I can give a summary of kind of the general overthinking or overview that led to this recommendation. Just such a unique school year from the very beginning of derecho impacting the start of the school year, delaying the start of the school year almost 3 weeks, to dealing with all the challenges of COVID as well. We did apply for the waiver for the school days for the derecho damage that delayed the start of our year, and we were granted that waiver. We did not take advantage of most of that waiver at the start of the year, just not sure what the rest of the year is going to look like. Whether it's going to be another rough winter, whether COVID is going to really interrupt our learning even more than it did. So just weren't quite sure what that was going to look like, so we decided to hold tight and make up as many of those days as possible. Now that we've gotten through all that time frame, with everything that's happened this year, I really think to acknowledge the challenges of the school year and to get a head start on the numerous construction projects we have, a change of the closing day of the school to the Friday, end of a complete week, is the right thing to do at this time.
Okay. I think it shows prudence that, we got the waiver, but we waited until we knew that we'd achieved our academic goals. So that's important, I think, to reflect on. I also think, just in the conversation we had about this, understanding that we have met those academic goals, like we're not cutting the kids short those 3 days. They can get their academics done by June 4th. We've talked about that. So, I do recognize that this is going to put some families in a crunch for those 3 days. It's unplanned, but I do think that after listening to everything and looking at all the options, that I do think this is the right thing to do for the end of the year.
I agree with Britt. We're in a situation right now that the derecho, nobody had time. We had to make split-second decisions. This gives people at least 2 weeks to figure out some kind of plan, like Britt was pointing out. And I think that's the most time that we've ever had, from a snow day to the derecho to even with the coronavirus. So hopefully that will give the parents the time needed. Us making the decision tonight instead of later to help them get to where they need to be with their little ones.
Yeah, I shared with Shannon 2 weeks ago when we were together, and I'll share it again this evening, that we made some pretty major decisions last summer and last fall, and our major goal was to get the kids back in school. So with that said, the mask mandate fit that well. And with all of those pieces put together and all the efforts of all the staff and the teachers and the administration and everybody and the kids, they did everything correct. And this is, no, I shouldn't say correct. They did everything that they could possibly do to make the school year a success, and it has been a success, and I think this just fits right into that, so.
And just to clarify, we still have about 3 or 4 days of additional waiver time that we would not be using by making up these 3 days. We still had several days that we did make up, even with this change.
Okay. Tim, did you have
I agree with what everybody said.
That's fine, I just wanted to give you
Yeah.
an opportunity. All right, so, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So it carries.
I'll make a motion to approve the open enrollment request as presented.
Second?
Okay, Kara and Britt. Okay, any discussion, questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amended personnel listing.
Kara and Barry, thank you. As I look through this, there are quite a few people who they've listed retirements. We want to thank all of them for their time here at Linn-Mar, however long it was. We appreciate you and glad that you're able to move on, and hope it'll be something that's exciting for you going forward. Anyone else with comments or questions for any of the contracts or anything? Are we good?
I just think some of them, like you said, to reiterate, have put in a lot of time into the Linn-Mar district and been there for our students for a long time, and these 5 people that are retiring, I do hope that things go as well as they hope that they will go.
Yeah. Okay, so, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. So we're to board communications. I think Shannon went over the graduation. I'm supposed to start at 1. Most of the time we're there by around 12:30, so if you want to kind of shoot that as what you're aiming for, it would be awesome. June 2nd, our ribbon cutting open houses, which Shannon also discussed, and anything else there that somebody wants to bring up? Anything else? Okay, not seeing any, I would entertain a motion to,
Can I just?
oh, sure.
It wasn't related to this. Wednesday night, I had the privilege of judging the project Lead the Way, their senior capstone. So there were 4 different teams. I think this is the second, maybe the 3rd year I've done it. It is the ideas. Basically they come up with a project. They have a schedule, they have a budget, and they kind of work towards that, and then present at the end. They were all fantastic, and the presentation skills, or the soft skills that we talk about from Iowa Big and other places, was fabulous. I was blown away at the level of professionalism that they had. So the winner, there were some great ideas. The winner they built some different type of fixture for their dorm room, because there were 2 girls going to college next year, and they wanted something different too. There was a group that they used to break their PlayStation remote, so they built a kind of a shield to absorb it and for grip as well. And so I thought they all had great ideas. And if you ever have a chance once a year, it'd be a good thing to go to. So.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. A motion for adjournment?
I make a motion to adjourn the regular meeting at 5:43 p.m.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries. At this time, we'll take a short break and then come back for going into closed session.